The heavy blast door buckled, yielding to the relentless force of a kinetic hammer. Metal shrieked, sparks cascading across Caleb's vision in a brilliant display of white and gold. He didn't blink. Blood trailed from a jagged gash on his forehead, hot and vivid against his skin, but his grip on the plasma rifle remained steady. He could feel his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic, powerful rhythm that felt less like fear and more like a fuel pump priming an engine. Beside him, Xylia crouched, her four hands trembling as she recalibrated the override. She looked at him, her large eyes reflecting the fire in his own. "For a Terran, pain is just data entry," he whispered, the corner of his mouth twitching into a grim, defiant smile. He stepped into the breach, a silhouette of sheer will against the encroaching darkness of the dreadnought's core. The archival playback froze. Cilia leaned back in her chair, the bioluminescent glow of the Galactic Council's observation deck bathing her face in soft blue light. She had watched this specific file 17 times. To the rest of the galaxy, the human species was a statistical anomaly, a collection of fragile, bipedal organisms from a high-gravity deathworld. They were often dismissed as Space Orcs, chaotic and unpredictable. Yet as she stared at the frozen image of Caleb Vance, she saw something else. She saw human ingenuity fused with a terrifying primal grace. Humanity didn't just survive, they thrived in the places where other species withered. They were the prey that hunts back. The mission had begun 3 hours prior under the sterile lights of the USC Vanguard's briefing room. The objective was simple: infiltrate the Obsidian, a pirate dreadnought currently positioned to glass a defenseless colony. The Galactic Council had recommended a tactical retreat, citing the impossibility of the odds. Humans, however, viewed stubbornness as a martial art. Caleb had been the one to lead the charge. As a soldier, he was a master of duality, possessing the ability to hold space for both a quiet gentleness and a necessary explosive aggression. Before the drop, Cilia had watched him comfort a nervous recruit, his voice a low, steady anchor in the storm of pre-combat adrenaline. He was teaching the boy about fear management, explaining that anxiety was merely the body's way of sharpening its tools for action. Then, the moment the boarding pods launched, she watched him switch from diplomat to demon. The infiltration was a blur of high-velocity movement and tactical precision. The Terran spirit was on full display as the squad bypassed thermal shielding that should have been impassable. They used their status as deathworlders to their advantage, moving through high-pressure vents and radioactive conduits that would have liquefied a softer species. Caleb moved like an apex predator, his senses dialed into the vibration of the ship's deck plates and the heat signatures of the warlord's guards. This was the pinnacle of sci-fi warfare, where technology met the raw, unyielding power of the human soul. Every step closer to the engineering deck was a testament to their resilience, viewing every obstacle not as a stopping point, but as a hurdle to be cleared with increasing speed. The engineering deck was a cauldron of blinding white light and screaming turbines. Warlord Krog stood between the squad and the reactor core, a massive slab of muscle and kinetic shielding that dwarfed the human soldiers. The pirate captain laughed, the sound vibrating through the deck plates like a seismic tremor. He swung a gravity hammer, the weapon displacing the air with a thunderous crack that sent Caleb skidding across the polished floor. Caleb hit the bulkhead hard, the impact rattling his teeth, but he didn't stay down. To a deathworlder, gravity was just another opponent to wrestle into submission. He stood up, spitting a glob of crimson onto the pristine metal. His armor was cracked, his breathing ragged, yet his eyes burned with a terrifying, lucid focus. This was the duality of his species on full display, the capacity to endure bone-shattering force and convert it instantly into calculation. Xylia watched from the upper gantry, her heart rate spiking. She saw Caleb holster his rifle. He wasn't retreating, he was changing the rules of engagement. He sprinted straight at the warlord, moving with a speed that defied his injuries. Krog roared and brought the hammer down, expecting to crush the human into paste. But Caleb didn't dodge away. He slid under the arc, effectively weaponizing his own small stature against the giant. The collision was electric. Caleb slammed a magnetic charge onto Krog's chest plate, the device humming with lethal potential. The warlord swiped back, catching Caleb with a backhand that threw him toward the reactor shielding. Pain flared hot and bright, but Caleb's grin was sharper predator realizing the trap had sprung. He wasn't fighting to overpower the giant, he was fighting to outlast him. The charge detonated, not with fire, but with an EMP pulse that locked Krog's power armor into a rigid, paralyzed statue. "The prey that hunts back," Zelia whispered, dropping from the gantry to catch Caleb as he stumbled. The reactor began to cycle toward critical mass. The ship groaned, the structural integrity failing under the stress of the sabotaged core. Caleb leaned heavily against Zelia, his weight solid and warm. There was no panic in his touch, only the steady, reassuring grip of a protector. "We leave now," he rasped, the adrenaline fading into a focused resolve. They moved as one entity, sprinting through the collapsing corridors as the obsidian began to tear itself apart. The escape was a blur of searing heat and the roar of venting atmosphere. As their drop pod jettisoned into the void, a silent, expanding sphere of white light consumed the pirate dreadnought behind them. The archival footage ended, the room plunging back into the soft, cool blue of the observation deck. Zelia powered down the console. The Galactic Council had asked for a threat assessment on the Terran Union, expecting a report on fleet numbers and resource allocations. Instead, she had compiled a psychological profile of a single soldier. She typed her final conclusion into the datapad. The file wasn't just a science fiction story to be filed away in the archives. It was a warning. Humans were not merely Space Orcs swinging clubs. They were something far more dangerous. They were the galaxy's apex predator because they refused to accept the concept of a no-win scenario. They treated survival not as a matter of chance, but as a matter of will. Celia looked out the viewport at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, Caleb was likely patching himself up, already preparing for the next impossible fight. The report was simple. Status: do not engage.